to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Mr. Minister Gregory Taylor, and he's talking about the state of spirituals and hymns in the African American church. And of course, Brother Taylor, we had an opportunity to deal with that first segment and to talk about what you consider to be the state of spirituals and hymns in the African American church. And I think that during that last part, you mentioned something about the distinction between the mass choir and the sanctuary choir. Let's explore that for a while.
Okay. Well, when I say sanctuary choir, I'm referring to what they would refer to today as the senior choir. And in my background coming up as a lad, we had to sing with the elderly people. And there was one Sunday that we had to sing to ourselves. And what I've discovered is that in the process of us singing with the elderly, this is where the learning to sing was being passed on from one generation to the next. Even though at that time I didn't fully understand.
The whole process of learning how to sing.
That's right. I didn't fully understand it at the time, but as I got older, I realized what was taking place. And we used to have choir practice every Monday night. And these were the kind of things that contributed to shaping us. And I can remember when I say mass choir, during the 60s period, the people came from all the churches around the community, and they formed the mass choir. And this is when the sound, the rocking and the clapping and the marching began. And every time I see that today, I get the feeling that look like they're trying to jump start the civil rights movement, you know, by the rocking, massing, and the marching and rocking this year. It just appears that this is what is taking place in the worship, or the worship has become complementary to what took place in the civil rights movement. And I'm not knocking the civil rights movement.
It might have been right for the time.
That's right.
Is that what you're saying for the civil rights movement, but it's not appropriate?
Yes, for what they were doing. It was appropriate. And there is a term that is called reclamation. You know, when you dig for coal, it is required that you put something back in the ground that is equivalent to what was taken out. But reclamation has never taken place when it comes to the sanctuary choir. And I even sometimes think, Dr. Haney, that there should be an atonement, an apology, because of the length of time that they have gone about. The music has constantly changed. And I sometimes think that those who use, after the songs were rewritten and sung in the streets, when they returned to the church, they were no longer the same singers that they left as. And I think right there is where they may have forgotten what it's like to sing in the sanctuary choir. I have forgotten that tune, you know, in that area.
And so, so you would suggest that perhaps one of the reasons that we are losing perhaps something in these in the singing of these hymns and spirituals now, we've lost something that we could possibly recapture, but we have to make some changes in order to recapture that. Now, what are some of those changes you guys?
First, I believe that there should be a gathering of elderly people, and there should be discussion. They should be given the opportunity to talk freely about the old hymns, because the churches that I visit here, I see a lot of dissatisfied senior citizens. One lady who was 102 years old, another that was 97, they just stopped going to church because they were no longer respected in the area of the music. And then there's another factor that we have to deal with, is the noise. There is a hearing loss problem. I've spoken to about 5 ear, throat, and nose doctors, and there's 36-some million people who are suffering from hearing loss in this country. And that is another area that has got to be dealt with, you know, in order to properly address this. But my heart goes out to the seniors, and we have been singing here with the nursing homes. I visited one of the nursing homes with Lady Carter Chapman. You know, got the opportunity to experience the nursing home here with her. And in Atlanta, I was visiting the nursing home and singing with the elderly, because that's where you have the true, fresh oral history memory of our heritage, which came through the music. But some people have grown ashamed of that. You know, I enjoy seeing them become happy in the church. And recently in a midweek study, we had a vacation Bible school actually, and there was the story was about in the storm when Jesus was on the boat, you know, and one of the elderly ladies there was singing a hymn, in the storm of life is raging.
Okay.
Stand by me. That's right. And she started to sing, and I believe his name was Mother Black. And she said, when the storm of life is raging, stand by me, remember me. And just hearing her cry out the therapeuticness in the music is what that was taking place there. And when it's properly done, and I often say that the old hymns and spirituals, they are caught. They're not taught, you know.
Okay. I understand. I see exactly what you're saying.
And in order for it to be caught, it has got to be, the atmosphere has got to be properly, proper and properly presented.
And so what your suggestion is that there ought to be a revisit in a real sense back to some of these. Well, now, do you find that most of the changes between the old and the new has to do with the tunes, and I mean the words? They're the same words, but they're used and they're said in different fashions and etc. I think you talked about Bradley.
Yes, that's right.
And I think that he had an attitude in terms of how he felt that these songs. Well, why don't you deal with that?
Okay, I've read most of his book, and in the book I remember him saying that he didn't believe in jazzing it up. And I learned from another minister in this city that Dr. Bradley was what you refer to as a purist. He believed in the pureness of the music. And that's the way I am. I believe in the pureness of the music. The clapping, the drums, the guitars, and all of that.
Saxophones and
yes,
all
of that. It has brought something else into the situation. You can't meditate on the music. You know, you can't mirror it. Your mind is not able to travel from where you've been, where you first was introduced to the music. You know, you're not able to soar, you know, and those type of things. So this is the area that I believe that a lot of attention needs to be given. And I have also presented Dr. Bradley to the Postal Service to get a postage stamp in his honor, Black Heritage stamp. And the purpose of this is to bring his music, attention to his music. And we've gotten several people who are planning to give testimonies. His birthday is coming up October the 5th, and several people will be writing in on that regard.
Okay, and Brother Taylor, let's take this final commercial break.
Okay.
Then we'll come back for 10 minutes, but we understand exactly what you're saying, and we would like to have, you simply promote that during this next segment, and we'll be back following this short commercial break.